Okay, so here we are following our next panel, all about overcoming obstacles in the workplace. And I'm delighted to be joined by three good friends of mine and a future you. I'd like them all to introduce themselves, please. So, Jamie Lee.
Hi everyone, so my name is Jamie Lee Abtar and I am the Executive Director for BAME Women in Travel, which stands for Black, Asian and Minority Ethnics here in the UK, and it's part of a much bigger organization called Women in Travel Social Enterprise, where we work with women to providing training and mentorship and employability skills to help them to advance in the travel and tourism industry. In my other life, as I like to say, I'm usually called a travel marketeer, and I work with destinations and travel brands, helping them to develop brand, collaborative brand projects, marketing and advertising. That's me in a nutshell.
Thank you. Olly.
Hi, I'm Olly Nicholls. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at Attraction World. We're the UK's leading ticketing company for tours and activities and attractions around the world. Various brands. We have a steep history which spans 15 years now in the travel industry. Very well known within the retail sector. Then also we have a brand called Florida Ticks, which is an Orlando specialist, and also Attraction Ticks, which is the UK's leading theme park and attractions reseller.
Thank you. And Ben.
I'm Ben Rogers. I am one of 6 group sales managers for Best Western Hotels and Resorts in the UK. I look after conference booking and transient booking agents in the north of England and Scotland and Northern Ireland and quite a lot of Wales as well. Currently we've got a portfolio of 300 hotels within the UK. Over the last few months, I think we've had 112 that have been operating. So we're doing better than most, but obviously this weekend was the big one where quite a few more have opened their doors, and you'll have probably seen the Best Western chain featured on Channel 4's Very British Hotel Group, which has been quite interesting.
Can you tell me about, an obstacle that you really have had to overcome, and actually how you overcame it?
That's a good question. I think for me, my initial obstacles came, being an immigrant to a Black woman and being quite young as well, moving to the UK. And after kind of completed my master's at Bournemouth and looking for a job role here in the UK, it was quite a really stressful time, doing up to probably 25 interviews. And these are like the 25, those are the ones where I was doing like second and third interviews, preparing presentations, going all out. And I'm blessed to have a really connected network. And they are people that would like review my stuff and prep me for interviews and be like, you've got this, you've got this. And then, constantly being told, okay, you're not the right fit or you're not the thing. It was a bit of a challenge for me, but it really did push me to, think outside the box. And I kind of landed my first job role, or what I like to call now it was my dream job, through LinkedIn, going out there and reaching out to small independent tour operators and saying, well, I've got this skill set that I think could be useful to you. It'd be great to sit down and have a coffee. And that's how I met my first boss, and she was like, you're not snatched up yet. And, instantly we had a connection, and I worked with her for about 4 years. I had a great experience, learned so much. And to this day, we are still very, very close. So that was one of the obstacles, I think, for me, was getting into the job market here in the UK, but I had to really step outside my box and look for those opportunities, really.
Yeah, it's a strange one for me. So I joined the tourism industry back in 2000 as a rep in Menorca. I still remember when I went for my interview, I interviewed with kind of Thomas Cook, Air Tours, and then Thompson. And it was only down to one guy, a guy called Brian Young, who interviewed me in Leamington Spa one day. And I had a really bad speech impairment and stammer. I still have it today. It's not something I hide. But to stand in front of kind of the recruitment team at Thompson and present for 35 minutes on a destination scared the absolute life out of me. Somehow I got through. I don't know what Brian saw at the time. I stammered all the way through this presentation. What should have taken 15 minutes probably took about 2 hours. And then I got overseas, and there was kind of 4,000 reps at the time that you'd then have to kind of compete with for the best hotel. And there was a woman called Rachel Stamp who believed in me. She took me to the Victoria Player Hotel in Santa Tomas, Menorca. And every day I had to present to kind of 200 or 300 customers who had arrived in resort. And every day was getting out of bed and facing that anxiety and facing that fear of presenting in front of all these people. But it gave me a belief in myself that I'd never realized was there before, I guess, from situations that was a lot easier for me to shy away from. I kind of hit them head on. My friends thought I was crazy doing the job I did. People that I worked with were like, just give up and walk away. And I was like, there's no way in the world I'm giving up on this. And kind of within my first 6 months of working overseas, I won accolades from across the business on best customer service, best reps overseas. And it was back in the days when TUI had huge amounts of overseas reps. So it gave me a sense of purpose and a sense of belief. And it's something, that I've never shied away from since. It gave me that never die kind of mentality to kind of push through. So I'm a big believer in kind of facing those fears head on and just really taking them on and fighting them until you win. And you won't always win. It will become, very scary. You will have those anxious feelings, but I'd much prefer that than just walking away. So
I, much like Olly, began my career overseas, clipboard in hand, as a first choice rep. So this was pre First Choice and Thompson merger. So I was there, pink polyester all the way. And I actually pretty much got overseas. I mean, my sexuality, you can't really hide it. I've always said, there's blind people and dogs that realise that I'm gay. I arrived in resorts, and it was very, very obvious that I was the only gay man that worked for First Choice in about 80 people. And then, it was just, sort of casual things at first. And then it began, they were a little bit uncomfortable with placing me in family hotels. They were a little bit uncomfortable. So it was kind of having to prove my point that, do you know what? Don't just give me to the hen night crew. You can put me in a First Choice holiday village and I'll do well. I'll do this. So kind of battling that. Coming back and working on the high street after 5 years overseas, it was less of an issue. You walk into any high street travel agent and there's a lot of gay men there. There's a lot of diverse sexualities, and because it tends to be a younger crowd, it's less of an issue. But it was very much when I went sort of off the high street and in towards working in, sort of the UK hotel market, conference agencies, commercial organisations tend to be a little bit more reserved. So the personality, the bigger personality that I have probably was a little bit uncomfortable for some of them. But it's something that I have always been a really strong believer in, never apologising for myself. I'll apologise for if you think I've not done a good enough job, and I know I could have. And I'll apologise for not giving great service, or often I'll do the British thing of apologising for something that I know is not my fault. I'll just say sorry anyway. But I'll never apologise for who I am. And so it's something. It's still been unconscious, even up to 18 months ago. There's an agency that I now don't have to look after. In a previous job role for a previous hotel chain, they wouldn't see me. They wouldn't give me an appointment. They didn't want me in the office, and it was because the owner of the agency lot older, a lot more traditional, didn't really like me, and actually turned around to my boss and said, I think we'd prefer a girl.
Wow.
So yeah, it was the fact that, I mean, number one, he referred to one of my colleagues as a girl, which I'm fairly sure we're easing away from girl, aren't we? We're using woman now.
I hope so.
Yeah. So yeah, it still exists. It's still little casual things, but I think even from 2003, my first year overseas, I've seen a massive change in the industry, but it's still there, and it tends to be the older crowd. So often the people in more senior positions, and although I've got loads of friends that work in HR. Claire's a prime example, and I think recruiters now are blind, I think, quite often to minorities, but it's the people that are signing the checks maybe that aren't, and I think that's where we see it creeping.
It's interesting because what I've picked up from all three of you has been very much around role models. I mean, you know, and having those role models that you can look up to. And I think, you know, the industry has often been accused of saying it's diverse and not being diverse enough, saying it's inclusive, saying it supports people through their disabilities to their sexuality and their sex and gender, but actually has been called out a number of times for that. And I think, you know, and for me, what's really interesting is what we're seeing coming through from the younger generations is a far more diverse workforce, and we need to have some more role models on there. But in terms of role models, I mean, all three of you, I know, put yourselves out there as role models. What other things do you think industry could be doing to actually help people not seeing things like diversity and inclusion as a barrier that they need to overcome?
You see in a lot of other industries, you see minority groups, representation groups, you know, there's organisations, particularly regarding sort of sexuality and gender diversity. You know, NatWest have got a fantastic programme. There's also, you know, organisations like Compass within the Royal Navy who deal with diversity and inclusion really, really well. But travel companies have always, I think, because it's fluffy, you know, they've always said, oh, well, we don't really need anything like that. You know, if you think about the amount of people that work for TUI Group, for instance, I don't think there's a TUI Pride group or you know, a lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender questioning, however you want to term it. I don't think that exists. And sometimes it's not even about being a massively active member. Not everyone, I've always said in life, not everyone needs to wave the flag. Everyone just needs to know that they won't be shouted down for waving it.
I think, and to add to him, I think travel and tourism, generally, it should be the most diverse industry. You know, we bring together all these different cultures and races and people. So why is it that we are so lagging behind all the different industries like entertainment and even technology? Do you know what I mean? And we also then, by doing that, we also neglect a huge segment of the marketplace and segment of consumers. We've got African American travelers that spend 64 billion. We've got Muslim travelers that spend 100, and I don't want to get misquote myself, 100 and something billion by 2020, and I can't remember the figures for LGBT, but they are enormous. And by ignoring them, that's a whole business. It's a business side to it as well, to diversity and inclusion. And it puzzles me that the travel industry just likes to, you know, just ignore diversity and inclusion, like it doesn't affect the organization as well. I mean, it's proven. There are multiple white papers that say that diverse teams produce better and perform better, and there are stats that say that. So I think for the industry, it's really to stop and have that be ready to have that open conversation. Start to see these so-called, that they call niche markets, as not just niche markets, but they are mainstream. When you're making over 64 billion pounds, you're no longer a niche market. You know,
that's
how can we target and appreciate that? So that's something I think the industry needs to really look at, you know, because we are neglecting those consumers.
Yeah,
I think Jane's
Olly,
right.
Yeah.
Go on, sorry.
No. All I was going to say, actually, Olly, because you've been very honest about your speech impediment, and some people, for people of, you know, for the BAME community and for a lot of the LGBTQ community who are obviously much more comfortable with being out, that they are out, but sometimes disabilities are hidden, know, and obviously you've managed to train yourself, but you're still very open about your speech impediment. Do you there's more that industry can be doing to include that side of it, as well as everything that Jamie Lee and Ben have spoken about?
I think it's really difficult though when it comes to disability. So I've also got type 1 diabetes, which I was diagnosed with a year and a half ago, and I went into a coma, which was totally out of the blue, didn't know anything about it. But I think from that learning experience as well, I think the industry do engage when it comes to disabilities, that they just don't shout about it. And I think also, I can really reflect on what Ben said earlier about when, he moved overseas in his pink uniform and green trousers. I was there in my yellow t-shirt and Jeff Bank shorts. I get it. And it was really strange for me to move overseas, because I'd only ever met probably 1 or 2 homosexual men ever before. This is like late 90s. I'd never really seen or been involved in kind of that part of life. And I kind of moved overseas, and it was quite comical, because on, inductions, you'd have all these guys, oh yeah, I love football and I drink beer and this, and then you'd meet them 6 months after, and they'd found their voice and they'd found their true person, and they'd gone away to be able to be in an environment where they could be themselves. And what I think the problem is, not the problem, I think one of the causes why, especially the UK industry, haven't embraced these changes is because it was kind of a lot of the UK trade had come from an overseas kind of perspective, had seen it and didn't realise that what they'd embraced back in the late 80s and 90s was such a huge thing in comparison to other industries. So as we moved forward into the noughties, I don't think the travel industry actually understood what a magnificent job they had done prior to that, and should have been shouting about it already. Now you see it across in the US, you see Expedia Group do amazing things for Pride, do amazing things for BAME all over the world. Yeah. Why hasn't the UK moved in that direction? Because I think, I'm a global citizen. I'm not British, I'm not European. I've lived all over the world. I've worked with people all over the world, and I've always treated people, whether it's a cleaner or a CEO, in the exact same fashion, because that's what I was kind of taught when I lived overseas. And when I did a welcome meeting to a whole variety of people, was that there wasn't, I'm a white guy, I'm a privileged white guy in my position I'm in today, but I have such a huge array of friends from the LBG, from different communities, because I don't see it. And it's really easy to sit there and say, I don't see it, but I just don't. I have friends all over the world that I've worked with, whether it be in Dominican Republic or Mexico, that I still talk to today, because you were able to be yourself in those overseas environments. And a lot of people that worked overseas were running away from lives in the UK where they had that urge to be themselves around different people. And that's why I think, in a way, the UK travel trade haven't made such, I don't want to say big thing, because it shouldn't be a big thing, but they haven't shouted about how amazing they've dealt with it over the years. And there's still a long way to go. There's still a lot of work to do, but it is now an educational process, because you are seeing a lot of industries now who are really engaging with those communities. And there's such an opportunity for employers within the industry to really engage and really, fly the flag, so to speak. But if you look at, my days at TUI overseas, it was just remarkable working with people who could be themselves in a way they could never be at home. And you used to see that. And I found it really difficult when I came home in the winter, because my friends in the UK that weren't exposed to it didn't understand it. They hadn't been educated in that manner. So for me then to explain, this is my mate Robert, he plays rugby and he's gay, was like, whoa, that doesn't make sense to me. And it was like, well, it makes perfect sense to me, because, I've lived with Robert for the last year and I've got to know Robert, and it gave me at such a young age a real understanding that, you just have to embrace everybody and take everybody for what they are, Fast
running out of time, and I'm so just pointed. But just sort of one final thought, maybe from all three of you, on overcoming obstacles, and maybe one bit of advice you might want to give. So I'm going to go in reverse. I'm going to start with Ben and go, and then Ollie, and then Jamie Lee.
It goes on almost directly from what Ollie's just said, which is that actually, as leaders in the industry now, we have to remember that we probably started in the industry at a time when doors were just being opened for us. Yeah. And it's actually that we need to remember to keep those doors open, you know, to hold the door for the next person, if you like, hold the door open. Because, do you know what, just because it's not an issue for us now, it will be for someone who's just starting. It will be for the person who's struggling to get the interview, or who's possibly not, might even just be leafing through a brochure or on a recruitment website and doesn't see a photo of someone they think looks like them, or looks through a brochure and sees a load of customers that, are the 2.4 family, or, aren't the diverse representation that they should be, and actually will be the customers that they're working with. So yeah, it's about holding the door open for me. It's about saying, do you know what? I've walked that path, and yeah, it will be tricky at times, but it won't be tricky because of that. It'll be tricky because it's a tough industry at times. So yeah, holding the door open. That's me.
Great, thanks, Ben. Ollie.
Cheers, mate. That's really difficult to follow. For me, it's about not giving up. So, the next 12 months for the whole industry, whether it's someone starting out in the industry or somebody already in the industry, it's going to be really tough. It's going to be really tough. It's going to test. It's going to create anxiety. It's going to create mental health challenges. Don't give up. The industry is the most resilient, out there. It will bounce back. It will bounce back in a very different manner. So I think you need to really look at your skill set. You need to really try and tailor that skill set to what you want to achieve now in the industry. And, if you are sat there today and you're on furlough, or if you think you may be being made redundant in the next few months, try and get retrained. Look at what skill set you have. Look at roles that you want to aspire to achieve, and go get that training. You can't sit there and blame others in 6 months' time. You have to do it for you, and you have to not give up. And I guess if that's one thing that I've learned from my mentors in the past, when, I was down on the canvas, so to speak, they pulled me back up every time and told me to carry on forward. And I always did. And I think when I was presenting for kind of yourselves in Birmingham a few months ago, before all this happened, I kind of said to all of those students, I shouldn't be where I am today. I still do the same job as I did back in 2001. I still sell tickets to attractions, and I'm not lucky. I took the opportunities that presented themselves, and I didn't give up until I got what I wanted. So I guess that's my kind of final message, is just have that self-perseverance and keep moving forward.
Really good, guys. For me, I think transcend the boxes that people put you in. I mean, time to step out those boxes. Look at expanding your network. This is the perfect time. Everybody's online. Get on your LinkedIn, as Ben and Olly mentioned. A lot of people are being made redundant and, on furlough, but this is a great time to look at developing your skill set, expanding your network, and, looking at your personal brand as well. So those are the few things I think people can look to do to help them navigate through this time, and, face the fear and do it anyway.
Thank you all so much. I think you're all wonderful examples of how obstacles can be overcome, and you can achieve all the things that you really set your heart at achieving. So thank you so much for sharing such personal stories with us. Really appreciate it. And thank you for supporting ITTFYICC.
Can I just add, if anyone wants to reach out over the next few months, if they need any support, and I'm sure the guys will say the same, please just drop me a message on LinkedIn, and we're here to help.
Definitely.
100%.
That's great. Thank you so much. I'm sure you'll get inundated with requests. Really appreciate it, and thank you so much for your time. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.